Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Compliance Documentation 101 workshop. My name is Gabriel Rodriguez, and I'm Senior Compliance Officer with the Department of Procurement Services Compliance Unit. We're going to go over what the requirements of the compliance documentations are. The first one is the City of Chicago remains committed to the growth and development of the small, minority, and disadvantaged-owned businesses, enterprises, and has pursued every opportunity to ensure that the city's procurement process remains fair, inclusive, transparent, and efficient through all of its processes. The compliance is a pivotal component at the Department of Procurement Services. It includes three main steps. The first one, contract goal setting, which is the compliance review of the bids and proposals. Second one is monitoring of the contract for the minorities, women, and disadvantaged enterprises. The EEO, Equal Employment Opportunity. The CRO, the Chicago Residence Ordinance, and the local requirement. And the third is the contract closeout. Step 1, pre-award requirements. Contract goals are set on a project-by-project basis. They are not general, they are specific. MBE, WBE, or DBE direct opportunities are identified based on the scope of work or detailed specifications of the contract. Contract goals are inserted into each specification. Percentages can range between 0 and 100%, which is considered a target market solicitation. Proper compliance submittal is a bid or proposal might be rejected as non-responsive if the bidder fails to submit one or more of the following with his bid or proposal. Number 1, an MW or DBE compliance plan demonstrating how the bidder proposes or plans to meet the contract-specific goals, which is the Schedule D. That's what we call the compliance plan. And or documentation of good faith efforts. And or, the third one, a request for reduction or waiver of the contract-specific goals. Schedules, good faith effort, and waivers. The Schedule B, the schedules are dependent on what kind of contract you are bidding on, okay? We're going to tell if need be at the end when it's time for the questions. A Schedule B is a minority, women, or the disadvantaged business enterprise affidavit of a joint venture. That's when you pair up with another or others to bid on a project. A Schedule C is a minority, woman, or disadvantaged business enterprise letter of intent to perform as a subcontractor, supplier, or a second-tier subcontractor, along with the letters of certification and a copy of an agreed-upon proposal, meaning what are you going to do and what project you're going to be doing it for. The Schedule D, which is the compliance plan regarding minority, women, and disadvantaged enterprise participation. A Schedule H is the documentation of the companies of the bidder good faith efforts, and that is mainly for construction projects. A request to reduce or request to waive the M and the W goals. Step 2. Contract award. Contract monitoring begins once the contract is awarded. The Contract Compliance Unit has a shared responsibility with the City User Department for monitoring the participation of the certified minority, women, and disadvantaged business enterprises within the project. The unit is also responsible for monitoring the EEO, the Equal Employment Opportunity, the CRO, Chicago Residence Ordinance, and the local residency that are specific to each contract. Counting participation. Only the payments that are made to the minorities, women, or disadvantaged business enterprise firms that meet both the commercially useful function and area of visibility requirements are to be counted towards the contract-specific goals. The MBE, WB, or DBE self-performs. This is how the percentages are going to count towards the contract goal, how you as a prime or as a sub can count towards a specific project. MBE that self-performs, or WOD that performs, using its own workforce and equipment will count as a 1% towards that goal, depending on what percentage of that goal you have or being allocated to you. Minority women business enterprises that is a manufacturer will count as a 100% of the expenditures. So whatever you spend on, if you're the manufacturer, will count towards that goal. Minority or woman enterprise that is a distributor or a supplier will count as a 60%. Of course, you will pay the 100%, but only the 60% will count towards the goal. Okay? Subcontractor agreements. Those are the terms and conditions between the prime and the sub. No later than 3 business days after the receipt of the executed contract by the prime from the city, the contractor must execute a complete subcontractor agreement or purchase order with each minority, woman, or disadvantaged business enterprise listed on the contract Schedule D, which is the compliance plan, which means it tells us who is going to be participating in the project, who is going to be participating towards the goal. No later than 8 business days after the receipt of the executed contract, the contractor must provide to the Department of Procurement Services a copy of those subcontractor agreements, purchase orders, or agreements. Changes to a compliance plan. No changes to a compliance plan or contractual minority, women, or business or disadvantaged business enterprise commitment or substitution of the same might be made without the prior written approval from the Chief Procurement Officer. Unauthorized changes or substitutions, including performing the work designated for a subcontractor with the subcontractor's own workforces, shall be a violation of the M, W, or DBE special conditions, and a breach of the contract with the city, and might cause the termination of the executed contract for breach and or subject to contractor to contract remedies or other sanctions. No big chopping is allowed, meaning if you submit a compliance plan that I'm going to be hiring you and you, don't be going around them trying to find somebody else to replace them once the contract is assigned to you. That's not allowed. Reporting. There's different means and different ways to report to the city, depending on the goals of the contract. During the term of the contract, the contractor must submit partial and final waivers of lien from all of its subcontractors, specifically for the construction projects. The prime and the subcontractors will be responsible for reporting and confirming into payments into the city certification and compliance system that we call the C2 system. The prime access reports what you pay, what he paid the subs, and the sub goes in and acknowledges and confirms that that money is correct. The prime and the subcontractors will be responsible for submitting certified payroll documentation into the city's certified payroll processing system called the LCP tracker. That's another reporting tool that we have to track, report, and monitor payroll expenses. C2, M, W, and DBE payment reporting. The certification and compliance, once you get used to these acronyms, I know by now some of this might be going over your head, C2, B2, LCP, you become acquainted and you be like, oh, you're talking about the C2, you're talking about this. Okay, then we can all talk about the same jargon, but for now, just bear with me. C2, compliance certification system where payments get reported. LCP is payroll. Are we okay so far? Okay. The certification and compliance network system is a web-based tool, nothing in paper. Everything is electronic. It's an online tracking of the payments made to the prime by the city. It's online tracking of the payments made to the minority, women, and disadvantaged enterprise by the prime, and for us is a verification of the minority, women, and disadvantaged payments. And we monitor that frequently during the tenure of the contract. Site visits. There are announced and unannounced site visits that are performed by our field analysts from the compliance unit. While on-site at its construction location, the field analyst will meet with the resident engineer or the project manager, and he will request to receive the daily work schedule, and he will observe discreetly. He's not going to be interfering with anybody's workload or schedule for the day. The duties being performed by the subcontractors and by its coworkers. Okay? It is expected that both the contractor's employees and the subcontractors will cooperate fully during these visits. The next is kind of a flowchart of what the certified payroll system looks like. I know it's a lot of confusion, it's a lot of work, and a lot of words, but once you get into the hang of it, it's quite easy. Mainly that you are reporting for each one of the people that you have, that you said that you were going to have, that you are getting the prevailing wages, that you have all of the addresses to make sure that you are in compliance with the EEO, the CRO, and the local residency, part of the requirement of the contract. Contract closeout. Next. In the event of non-compliance, which could be various things that can cause you to be non-compliant, and without limitation, the following shall constitute a material breach of the contract between the city and the contractor, and entitle the city to declare a default, terminate the contract, and exercise those remedies provided for in the contract at law or in equity. The first one, failure to demonstrate good faith efforts. Second, disqualification as an MBE or WBE of the contractor or any joint venture partner, subcontractor, or supplier if its status, meaning the certification that it holds when you first brought it into the contract, into the project, as an MBE or WBE was a factor in the award of the contract, and such status was misrepresented by the contractor. Don't be making any funny business, because eventually we'll find it in. Contract closeout. Payments due to the contractor might be withheld until corrective action is taken. Mind you, all of this is happening during the project closeout. If the city determines that the contractor has not made good faith efforts to fulfill its compliance plan, the affected M or WBE may recover damages from the contractor. Failure to meet the EEO, Equal Employment Opportunity commitments, will also result in liquidated damages. Failure to meet the Chicago Residence Ordinance or local residency requirements will also result in liquidated damages. I know there is a lot of stuff to observe in a very few minutes. The City of Chicago has a website, more than one website. It has a Facebook page, Twitter, and a YouTube, where all of these videos are uploaded. I believe we're streaming live at this point, so everybody can follow what we're talking. All the different presentations are there. All the different topics are there in case you have any questions. Normally it's www.youtube.com/Chicago DPS. We're in Facebook, Chicago DPS. We're in Twitter, Chicago DP. Normally the department posts bids, advertisements, and addendums for upcoming workshops, events, and any policies and procedures that might affect the vendor communities. At this point, do any of you have any questions or concerns for me? Anybody?
Yes, I have a question about the first time I'm holding the mic. Okay, I have a question about the manufacturer. I think when we talk about some subcontractor performing work on a contract, maybe manufacturer of commodities or just distributors, suppliers. In some case, you may have a situation when some, like in the transportation, they may say, well, we are picking up the stone, so we are manufacturer, we are purchasing the stone, we are manufacturer, so they get 100%. Or we can just say, no, they are not manufacturer, we consider them just as a supplier because it's just picking up and delivering. It has always been a little confusion, and I just want to make sure that with manufacturer is let's say like Vulcan is manufacturer of stone, and let's say X trucking company pick up from them and purchase it. Can they be considered as manufacturer because they're purchasing and delivering?
Thank you for your question. So if a firm is certified as an MBE, WBE, or DBE as a supplier, they will receive only 60% credit, okay? If the firm is certified MBE, WBE, or DBE as a manufacturer of product, then we can grant 100% credit, okay? If a firm is an MBE, WBE, and is performing a service, and the example I always give to my staff is, if I asked you to build me a desk, and I asked you to include all the materials in order to build that desk, you quote me $100,000 to build that desk, which includes labor plus materials. You are the certified firm providing that service. And you go and get your supplies at Home Depot, who's not a certified firm. We will grant you 100% credit, no matter what, even though you're not going to an MBE or WB or DBE who's not a supplier. But if that MW or DBE is only providing supplies and no labor, then there's only 60% credit as a supplier.
Okay. And that's also refer back to the fact that they are certified. They are also certified as a supplier on the certification, original certification as well.
Yes. The answer is yes.
Okay,
it has to show up on their certification letter.
Okay, good. Thank you. I have another question. My second question is about the change to the compliance plan. I believe, if I read correctly, is after the contract has been awarded, you have 8 days, 8 business days to make any change to the original compliance plan that was submitted with the bid on Schedule D. Is that correct, right?
No, it is not.
Sorry. I didn't get that.
You have 8 days to submit to the city a copy of all subcontractors agreements or purchase orders with each one of your subcontractors. If you do need to make a change to the compliance plan, that's a whole different ballgame. It could happen either in between, as soon as the project starts, halfway, almost towards the end.
Okay, so it is allowed after the contract has been awarded, then a change to the compliance plan can be done also as the contract is in progress.
As long as it meets the requirements as specified in the actual contract. So, for example, if you hired me, you're the prime and I'm the sub, and you put in a Schedule C for me, and the Department of Procurement Services approved Monica Construction as part of your compliance plan, then I'm listed to do work. Now let's say a month goes by after the contract was awarded, and you try to sign off on the subcontract agreement, right?
Right.
Which you have to submit to DPS procurement.
Right.
Whatever factors transpire there in terms of you were not able to make an agreement, then there should be something from Monica Construction saying, I'm not going to do this job.
Okay.
Because what you promised me when I signed off on the Schedule C and what you're now telling me are two different stories.
Right.
whatever the case may be. But ultimately, in order to remove an approved MW or DBE, there has to be a letter from that MW or DBE addressing that, yes, I accept, I am withdrawing from this project.
Okay.
You cannot arbitrarily make substitution requests. You cannot arbitrarily just go ahead and change out one firm for another.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
That's answered the question. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
So along the
We have to,
same,
I'm sorry.
so along the same lines, if, for example, a subcontractor's dollar value, contract amount goes up or down, do we have to resubmit a new Schedule D and Schedule C with the increase or the decrease in contract amount?
If there's any changes to your MBWB participation and it's going to change your percentage that you originally committed to, then yes, you should submit those changes to the city of Chicago.
The procurement officer?
Yes. Jamie Reed, you can address it to our office, it'll go to the compliance unit.
Any other questions? Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, so we recently came into an issue with job order contracting. How do you monitor MBE, WBE compliance through job contracts?
So that's monitored on the actual department level and not specifically within DPS. We see it at the entire contract level. We don't see it at the suborder release level. So same principles apply. If you committed to 25 and 5% on one release, then, and you said you were going to pay out 100,000 to your MBE and 20,000 to your WBE, then in the end of that project release, that's what should have had ultimately been paid out. DPS is going to see it on the entire contract level to make sure that you actually achieve your overall commitment.
So we just report to that department?
You report back to the department, any changes.
Great, thank you.
You can have your internal spreadsheet where you have what you paid out, keeping in mind whether or not they are 100% or 60%, and then you can track how you are trending on that particular task order.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Any other questions? Hello.
I have a specific question that may just have to do with me. So you mentioned there's a YouTube site where we can look at videos.
Correct.
I'm interested in providing video services to the city. Is that a different department, or does that come through this procurement area as well?
That's a whole different department. That would be more likely with the Department of Public Affairs or Marketing.
We can talk offline pertaining to
okay.
Ultimately, what we do is we buy all the goods and services in order for the city to operate. So we purchase for approximately, 33 city departments. Cultural Affairs is probably one of the biggest users with regard to probably media relations. Department of Aviation would be another big department that probably uses a lot of media stuff. Again, the request has to come from the actual department into the Department of Procurement Services in order to procure a good or service.
So that would always appear on here anyway?
The bid opportunity listing, the buying plan is always useful. That comes out every quarter.
This too?
The buying plan comes out every quarter. The bid listing comes out every week. But we advertise every single day in the Chicago Sun-Times.
And then this gets updated what day usually?
Monday. Usually every Monday in the afternoon it is updated. If you actually sign up for our DPS alerts system, that bid opportunity listing will be sent out to you every single Monday.
And that's on the website that you gave us?
Yes, it is on our website.
Thank you.
You should have that DPS alert.
www.cityofchicago.org/procurement and click on DPS alerts. questions, more questions.
I wanted to ask a question, I'm sorry I got here late, but.
No problem.
We recently got the certification, MBE and DBE. Now, what I've been facing now, there are a lot of companies, we're subcontractors, we do waterproofing, and what we're facing is a lot of, like a lot of contractors, they're looking for people like us, but they have to be union. We are not union, we are a very small company, and do you know where to go to be a non-union, like look for operating opportunities for us?
It all depends on the specification. So if it's a construction job, you're probably that contractor who intends to bid on the project, more than likely has to be part of and abide by the project labor agreement. So the PLA. So in essence, there have to be employees out on the job site. I can't say that 100% of all of our projects have to be unionized, no. But I would say probably the greater majority of the construction ones you would have to be.
So at this point, we recommend you to be union, even if we're that small?
We're not making that suggestion. Again, not all projects that are specified in the bid opportunity listing is it required that they meet the PLA. So again, if the contractor is going to bid on the contract and it falls within the PLA, then they have to be union. They cannot use non-union employees. So whether they're certified or not certified, all of those employees who go on the job site will have to be union.
Yes.
So, for example, say we're the prime, and we have specific MBE, WBE percentage requirements that we have to hit for a contract. And a subcontractor is both certified MBE and WBE. Are we allowed to pick and choose which category we can put them? So, for example, if we're short on WBE, can we just put them under WBE instead of MBE, or?
Because job works on a release by release basis, yes. A firm who's certified as an MBE, okay, could be listed as an MBE on project 1. And then let's say for now you get project 2, and you want to use that same firm for the same type of services because it's similar, but now you want to use them towards the WBE because they are certified MW, then that's how you could use that firm. All right? You cannot say to us is, I've overachieved on the MBE, and this firm was certified as an MBE, I want to take that money and apply it to the WBE. No. Everything has to be project specific. We certify firms as MBEs, WBEs, and DBEs, okay? And they're 3 separate and distinct goals. If the project is funded locally with city funds or state funds, then we're allowed to use our MBE, WBE program. Then an MBE, WBE can only use towards either the M or W, okay, not both. Task orders, job, under the master agreements, then that's how you could use a firm who's certified MW based off of your different releases.
One more question, sorry. If you just, like I said, get certified MBE and WBE, the reason why is because we were 50% females, but now one of the males, he wants to step out a little bit to the side, so we probably gonna acquire a little bit more, ownership in the company. And how do we go back? We have to go back to recertify like from the beginning, or what do we do?
If there are any changes to the ownership of the company when you originally got certified, yes, you are going to have to submit a letter to the City of Chicago Department of Procurement Services, the certification division, that there have been ownership changes to your company. And submit all documentation to support those changes. Your legal documents, your owner certificates.
I was really coming for the 2:30. I think, I don't know if I was wrong, but on the internet it said 2:30 to But since you're answering those questions and you really know what you're speaking of, talking about, I'm a WBE and DBE, and a company in the city of Chicago, I was a direct with them to work in the city. What happened was this company, large company, transferred us where there were two contractors that came from south suburbs, and they were downsizing the large company, which I was direct. And I had to go through the company that came. I had to go a subcontract through this other company, but they were using my certification. So how was that? That's not right, is it?
No.
Yeah. And you need to,
Let me just, no other company should be using your certification.
I know.
However, we do and can count credit at the second tier, third tier, even possible fourth tier, which is very, very rare. But let's say, for example, if the prime contractor says, I want to use Monica Construction, and I'm the certified MBE, that is a direct subcontract with the MBE. The next scenario is, here's the prime, and they want to, and they're going to sub out to XYZ company that's not certified, but yet that XYZ company then subs out work to Monica Construction, who is an MBE. That prime can get credit.
Okay, but what happens there, and we needed you upstairs because I had a meeting with Mr. Coleman and some others.
So,
Right, because what happened was they didn't understand. They needed you to explain that to them. Because what happens to the contractor, the certified person, they don't make the money that they're supposed to make. And that's what happens to you.
yeah, so we'll look at the scenario more in detail.
Okay.
More questions? We had more people come in. I understand there was some late ones, but that's okay.
She was asking about getting union. So if we do certified payroll, that wouldn't count.
If you just because you fill out and submit certified payrolls does not constitute you as a union employee. You have to have an actual union agreement with the union in order to be a union company.
He's going to do another overview.
Yeah, I know a lot of you guys got an email.
Came in late.
Started at 2:30.
So he's
Started
gonna
a little early.
So we're going to go over.
So we'll just go over the PowerPoint. Is that okay? For those of you who would like to leave and step out, that's fine. For those of you who want to stay, continue to ask questions, we could take it as a sidebar.
Okay. Welcome to the Compliance Documentation 101. Okay. The City of Chicago remains committed to the growth and development of a small, minority, and disadvantaged business enterprises and have pursued every possible opportunity to ensure that the city procurement process remains fair, inclusive, transparent, and efficient. Every effort possible. The compliance part of the process is very pivotal component of the Department of Procurement Services. That's the department that I'm part of. This compliance takes so far 3 different processes. The first one is the contract goal setting, which is done during the compliance review of the bids and proposals. Second is the monitoring of the contract. That could be for minority, women of disadvantaged business enterprises, the Equal Employment Opportunity, the EEO, the Chicago Residence Ordinance, which is the CRO, and the local requirement. That's the local residency requirement. And the third one is during the contract closeout. We're going to go through each one of this. The first one is the pre-award requirements. The contract goals are not generally they are set up by specific contract by contract basis. The minority business and the woman business and disadvantaged business direct opportunities are identified based on the scope of the work and the detailed specifications. It's not generic, it's very specific. The contract goals are inserted into each specification depending on the specificity of the contract, the scope of work. The percentages of the contract and the participation of the W, the M, or the D could range from 0 to 100%. Could be 100%, has to be minority participation, or it could be a 0, depending on what the scope of work is. If it is a 100%, it will be considered to be a target market solicitation. Proper compliance plan submittal. A bid or proposal might be rejected as non-responsive if the bidder fails to submit one or more of the following documents with its bid and proposal. An M, W, or DBE compliance plan demonstrating how the bidder proposes to meet the contract-specific goals. That's what we call the Schedule D. That's our compliance plan. That will list out who is going to be participating, what the percentage is going to be, and what the allocated amount of money is compared to the grand total of the contract. The second one is documentation of the good faith efforts. That's another schedule. We're going to go over that in a little bit. And if there is the scope of work is something that cannot be of the skill required to do it is not, and you cannot find within the population of firms a firm that possesses that specific quality or skill, then you can request a reduction or the goals to be waived. That is during the bidding process, not afterwards. Now, what are all of these schedules that we're speaking of? What is the good faith effort and what are the waivers? A Schedule B, in case you happen to be a joint venture, meaning that you team up with 2, 3, or 4 more companies, and you do a joint venture to exercise your option to bid on a project, that you will be using the Schedule B. All of that comes with the package once you pick up the solicitation. A Schedule C, that is a letter of intent that is submitted by either the minority, the woman of the disadvantage. It's a letter of intent, me being the sub, that I'm going to be working with you, the prime, on a specific project, a specific task that I'm going to be doing at a specific price. That's what the Schedule C is. I could be directly to you, or like Monica was explaining, I could be reporting to one of your subs, or I could be reporting to the sub of a sub of a sub. It can go up to whatever number of tiers are needed. The Schedule D, which is the actual compliance plan. The compliance plan is a summary of all of the Schedule Cs that are attached to it. It is you as the prime comes and said, okay, I have all of these Ws and all of these Ms that are going to be working for me. I already made the arrangement with you. And it has to be a meeting of the mind. It has to be a consensus of what you're going to be doing, what your scope, what the portion of the scope of work of the project is, how much you're going to do it for, and what is the share of the entire goal is going to be allocated to you. Then in turn, once I got all of that from you and your certification letter, I put the Schedule D together, which is the compliance plan. I have to list your names out, what the percentage is going to be that's allocated to your firms, and what the amount is. That's the actual compliance plan. The Schedule H, and this is only for construction projects, is the documentation of the good faith effort, meaning what other firms did you also reach out to solicit participation in the project. And there's the other document is the request to N, either to reduce or to waive the M and the W goals. At this point, once the contract is awarded, that's when the monitoring begins. We have a shared responsibility, the compliance unit, with the city user department. That is the one that actually put the bid out. Could be the Department of Streets and Sanitation, Department of Water, Department of Transportation, whichever department happens to be, to monitor the participation of the minority, women, and disadvantaged businesses. We also have the responsibility to monitor the EEO, Equal Employment Opportunity, the CRO Chicago Residence Ordinance, Residency, and the local residency. That is project specific. Some of the contracts require that you do have part of the CRO. Some of that portion has to be dedicated only in the vicinity of the project. That is the local residency part. We have to monitor that part. Now, in order to count for participation, there's number one, the M, the W, or the D has to meet two different criteria. One is, and they have to meet them both, not just one. One, that they serve commercial useful function, and in the area of specialty requirements could be counted towards the contract-specific goals. Now, how we count the credits? The M, the W, or the D can be self-performing, meaning the contract calls for a DBE. I am a DBE. I don't need to seek anybody out to come and work for me. I can do at a 100%. Same applies for M, same applies for the W. If the contract does not have any other participation, because if it does, then I will only do the portion that fits me, and I will have to complement with the other firms to do the other part. And then I will get the credit for the part that I did. Does that make sense to everybody? The MW, if it's a manufacturer, and I believe Monica explained that a little bit, if you have 100% of the expenditures, that counts towards your credit. If the M or the W happens to be a supplier, then only 60% of what you paid out counts towards the credit. Of course, you have to pay them 100% to give them $100, but only 60% is accounted towards credit on that goal, on that project. Does that make sense?
Is it services as well?
Only for suppliers. And normally that will say anything that is required to get the contract done. Normally services, you provide your services at 100%. But for suppliers, normally those are the wholesalers, distributors. Subcontractor agreements. Those are kind of like the Bible between the prime and the sub. No later than 3 business days after this prime has received a copy of the executed contract from the city, the contract must execute, and that is always a good idea, a subcontract agreement, a purchase order, or an agreement with each one of its M, Ws, or Ds that are listed on the Schedule D, which is the compliance plan. No later than 8 business days after you have received the contract from the city, you need to submit a copy of each one of those subcontractor agreements to the Department of Procurement Services. Now, changes to a compliance plan. There's always going to be different scenarios that can cause you to change a vendor. Not that you're going to bypass it, or just because you didn't get along with the person that you're going to say, okay, I'm going to drop you and I'm going to change you. It has to be a business logic behind that. So no changes to the compliance ban or contractual agreement that you might have with an M, a W, or the D commitment, or substitution of the M, a W, or the D subcontracts may not be made without the written prior consent in writing from the Chief Procurement Officer. You cannot just by your own free will change without getting that letter, because we do need to review, make sure that it fits every requirement before it gets approved. Unauthorized changes or substitutions, including performing the work designated for a subcontractor with the subcontractor's own force, shall be a violation of the M, W, or D special condition, which special condition is part of the contract that the prime receives, and a breach of the contract with the city, and it might cause the termination of the executed contract for breach, and be subject to contractor to contract remedies and other sanctions. No bid chopping is allowed. Meaning, if you already have an agreement with a sub, you cannot just go, I'm going to put you here as a placeholder and then start chopping behind his back. That's not allowed, because that is not be approved. Now we're going to cover what is reporting. During the term of the contract, the contractor may or must submit to the Department of Procurement Services partial and final waivers of liens from every one of the subcontractors. The prime and the subcontractors will be responsible for reporting, you as a prime, and the subcontractors will be responsible for confirming into the city certification and compliance system that we call the C2 system. The prime and the subcontractors will be responsible for submitting certified payroll documentation into the city certified processing system. It used to be paper records, but now everything is electronic, so that certified payroll processing system, we call it LCP tracker. I know it's a lot of acronyms, so we'll get there. So we got the C2 for payments and the LCP for payroll. System C2, M, W, and D payment reporting. The Certification and Compliance Network System is a web-based tool that provides three main duties. One is the tracking of online payments made to the prime by the city, the online tracking of the payments made to the M, the W's, and the D's by the prime, and it's also verification of the payments that have been made. That's how I monitor. That's how our unit monitors compliance and how the prime is achieving those goals or working towards those goals. Site visits. The site visits will be performed announced or unannounced by one of our field analysts. It is while the field analyst is on site, they will meet with either the resident engineer or the project manager, and they will request to receive the daily work schedule, and they will be observing the duties performed by the subcontractors and their workers. It is expected that both the contractor's employees and the subcontractors and its employees to fully cooperate during this monitoring process. Whatever they need to request, just to be full and open and candid. This flowchart is a little confusing, but it kind of depicts what the certified payroll processing system is, which is the LCP tracker. Basically, you need to sign on and report the wages that you are paying to each and every employee. Based on what the results are, basically based on what you put in, that's how we track how you are, based on the goals of the contract, how you are actually accomplishing those goals. The step 3 of the compliance part is the contract closeout. In the event of non-compliance and without limitation, the following shall constitute a material breach of the contract between the city and the contractor, and entitle the city to declare a default, terminate the contract, and exercise those remedies provided for in the contract at law or in equity. Number 1, failure to demonstrate good faith efforts. If you didn't meet the goal, then we will require that you submit those, what we call good faith efforts, what you did in attempts to remedy through the project. Second is disqualification as an M of the W of the contractor or any joint venture partner, subcontractor, or supplier if its status of an M or a W was a factor in the award of the contract and such status was misrepresented by the contractor. So don't be playing funny business. Step 3, contract closeout. Payments that are due to the contractor might be withheld by the city until corrective action is taken. The city determines that the contractor has not made good faith efforts to fulfill its compliance plan. The affected M or W may recover damages from the contractor. Failure to meet the EEO commitment may result in liquidating damages. Failure to meet the CRO and the local residency also might result in liquidating damages. Now, all of this information, a lot of these trainings that are being taped are available in YouTube, and you can just go into YouTube and that type Chicago DPS, and all sort of training exercises, videos are there. You can follow us in Chicago DPS, also in Facebook, and Chicago DP in Twitter. If you do want to get some of these alerts that we're speaking of, you can go into www.cityofchicago.org/procurement and sign up for the alerts. All of these sites are going to have the bid advertisements and any addendums to any of the bids that have been advertised, upcoming workshops and events, any policies and procedures, changes to those that might affect your either your contract or any of the work projects that you are working on. So far, did you have any questions or concerns at this point? Thank you for taking the time to come in. Appreciate it. Make sure that you pick up all the literature that is right outside the door, specifically the DPS alert. You will be reminded of the different training classes that